Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we unpack compelling sources, pull out the key insights, and hopefully spark some curiosity along the way. Today, we're tackling something I think pretty much everyone bumps up against. Procrastination. You know, that classic thing of putting off what we know we need to do.
Exactly. And we're not just skimming the surface here. We're really getting into some fascinating excerpts from Dr. Neil Fiore's book, The Now Habit. Dr. Fiore, he's a psychologist, a consultant, really known for his work on productivity. His whole program is about cutting stress, freeing up time, and specifically giving you, effective strategies to actually start tasks and, importantly, finish them efficiently.
Right. So our mission, our goal for this deep dive is to extract those concrete details, the really practical tools, and those specific mindset shifts, the things that can actually break you out of that procrastination perfectionism cycle. We'll look at the why, sure, but more importantly, the how. How do we change these patterns right down to the nitty-gritty details?
Okay, so let's unpack this first bit. A lot of us just think, oh, I'm being lazy when we procrastinate. But Dr. Fiore, he gives us a much richer picture, doesn't he? He outlines some specific warning signs, detailed signals that tell you if you're really struggling with procrastination or achieving goals or just have poor work habits. It's about seeing the detailed footprint it leaves.
That's exactly right. And these aren't like vague feelings. They're actual behaviors you can observe. For instance, one big one is feeling overwhelmed by obligations.
Yeah.
That feeling where life just seems like this endless, crushing to-do list, a burden of things you haven't met is a very specific feeling, that weight. Yeah, I think many people can relate to that. And it goes beyond just feeling overwhelmed, right? What other sort of practical signs should we look out for in our own lives?
Well, another really crucial one is unrealistic time management. This is where you consistently misjudge how long things take. You end up being late a lot. Maybe your plans are kind of fuzzy. Or you might have vague goals. You're not really clear on what you're aiming for, so distractions just pull you away easily. And a tough one is feeling unfulfilled. Feeling frustrated or guilty about what you're getting done, maybe because your own expectations are just overwhelming. These are really specific flags that procrastination's likely in the mix.
So if you're listening and nodding along to any of those, well, you're definitely not alone. What stands out most to you there?
It's just fascinating, really, because Fiore makes it clear procrastination often isn't just a lack of willpower. It's more complex. It actually provides this temporary relief from stress. You know, it's driven by wanting to avoid pain or judgment, even if it's just perceived judgment. And it gets reinforced sometimes by experiences where delaying things actually weirdly paid off in the short term.
Okay, and here's where I think it gets really interesting. He talks about procrastination as a form of quiet rebellion, that people sometimes use it to express resentment, maybe against bosses or systems where they feel kind of trapped. Delaying becomes this subtle pushback.
Absolutely. And beyond that sort of rebellion, it's also very often used against fear of failure. If you have perfectionistic tendencies, that fear gets magnified, right? So procrastination becomes this protective shield. It guards your self-worth because your work isn't out there being judged yet. The source even mentions it can be about avoiding a fear of success, which sounds counterintuitive, but it can, stir up conflicts in relationships or other areas.
Wow. So it's not always just simple avoidance. It can be a really detailed internal psychological strategy playing out. And it's probably worth remembering, critics like Piers Steele, who wrote the procrastination equation, they might argue some of it is just, boredom or external distractions. Not all of it is deep-seated fear.
That's a fair point. Context matters.
But the key takeaway from Fiore here seems to be, and he really emphasizes this detail, knowing how you procrastinate is even more important than knowing why. Observing our own patterns is critical. The specifics matter.
Yes, exactly. And that leads perfectly into another really powerful area in Fiore's work, our internal dialogue, the words we use with ourselves. He highlights these things he calls counterproductive messages. Phrases like, I have to, or I should. These immediately create inner conflict, resistance. They sound authoritarian, like you don't have a choice. And that just ramps up anxiety and makes you want to avoid the task even more. They basically frame you as a victim, which just adds stress.
Oh man, that should and have to trap. So recognizable. So, okay, practically speaking, how do we actually change that script? What's the specific language shift we need?
The core transformation comes from really internalizing the power of choice. That's the fundamental shift. You need to consciously switch to a language of, choice and commitment, language that reflects personal responsibility, empowerment. So instead of whining about what should be done, you start asking yourself constructive questions like, what actions can I choose to take right now?
Can you give us a really concrete example? Maybe walk through one of the detailed cases.
Sure. The book mentions Betty. She felt totally burdened by this annual report she needed to do, constantly saying, I have to do the annual report, and it just made her feel like a victim, kind of depressed about it. But after some coaching, she made a very specific shift in her language. She started saying, I choose to work on this report with full responsibility for its consequences.
Subtle but powerful.
Exactly. That small, precise change moved her from feeling obligated and weighed down to feeling empowered. She could then take actual steps. It changes the whole emotional flavor from dread to, well, ownership, and that boosts motivation.
Okay, now this next concept, honestly, it feels like a total game changer, almost counterintuitive, especially if you're someone who jams their schedule full of work. It's called the unschedule. Can you walk us through the details? How does this thing actually work?
Right. The core idea of the unschedule is pretty radical. You prioritize and schedule your guilt-free play and committed activities first. So things like sleep, meals, exercise, actual leisure time appointments, those go on the calendar before any work tasks, meticulously. What this does is it makes you acutely, precisely aware of how much time is really left over for your projects and goals. It gives you a realistic baseline.
Okay, so it's like flipping the calendar script, a reverse calendar focused on life first, and then how does the work fit in a granular way?
Precisely. Once all those non-negotiable life things are locked in, you only add work to the calendar after you've actually done a short session. Specifically, about 30 minutes of work. The main goal here isn't finishing, it's starting. Just starting.
Just 30 minutes.
Just 30 minutes to start. The philosophy is basically keep starting, finishing will take care of itself. That act of just beginning, even for a short burst, it demystifies the task. It shows you what's really involved and cuts down that initial anxiety.
That makes me think of that client, Carolyn, in the book. She put off some task forever, then finally started it using this method and discovered it only took, 9.5 minutes? That specific detail really nails how starting is the big hurdle.
It really does. The unschedule is all about those 30-minute chunks. And Fiore advises, never end a work session feeling stuck or defeated. Stop when you're on a roll, even slightly. Maintain that positive momentum. He also suggests, actually recording your uninterrupted quality work time and then rewarding yourself right after a work session.
Rewarding yourself like a little treat.
Yeah, something genuinely enjoyable. The benefits add up. You get realistic about time, overwhelm shrinks because the sessions are short, you build positive associations with work, which boosts motivation, and counterintuitively, you often end up with more free time, which can lead to even more productivity, just flowing naturally. It's about being mindful of the detailed rhythm of your week.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about making work less like work, more engaging, maybe even enjoyable. This is where that concept of the flow state comes in, right? It sounds a bit mystical, maybe, but Fiore links it directly to productivity.
Yeah, flow, it's that peak mental state Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi describes so well. When you're in flow, you've got intense focus, time feels like it warps, you feel genuinely happy even though you're tackling something challenging. Working in flow basically makes the effort feel less burdensome. It amps up creativity, and it helps you sidestep a lot of those procrastination triggers. Your concentration gets sharper, you're more efficient, and there are even potential health benefits. It's a powerful state.
Right. But how do we, get there on demand?
Yeah.
Are there specific detailed techniques Fiore suggests for triggering flow?
Yes, absolutely. There are practical ways. One key technique he details is a 2-minute focusing exercise. It's a simple, hands-on exercise designed to help you shift into that creative mindset. You basically calm your mind, clear out the mental clutter, the distractions, and you gently prepare your brain's creative side while telling your inner critic to just take a break for a minute.
Just 2 minutes.
Just 2 minutes. It's about cultivating those positive neural habits, building the muscle for focus, and reducing that stress response. It's a small detail with potentially big impact.
And this connects to creativity too, doesn't it? He mentions the importance of first drafts.
Exactly. To really let creativity happen, you have to temporarily suspend that critical voice, the left brain's tendency to analyze and judge everything immediately. You need to let the right brain just generate ideas freely, get that first draft down, before the editing and filtering start. Think about it. Most great creators revise heavily, right? It's not usually perfect the first time. It's a non-linear process. He gives the example of Jacob, this workaholic guy who procrastinated because of fear and perfectionism. Just using that simple focusing exercise significantly improved his ability to concentrate and get started. It's about letting those raw ideas out first, without getting bogged down and perfecting every tiny detail right away.
Okay, so we've got new ways of thinking, talking to ourselves, structuring time, even getting into flow.
Yeah.
But habits are sticky. How do we build resilience, keep this going?
That's crucial. We need tools for persistence, for handling setbacks. Fiore talks about planned setbacks, which sounds weird, but it means seeing slip-ups not as failures, but as chances to practice your new strategies without totally ditching the old habit cold turkey. It builds resilience without the self-blame spiral. And hardiness is key, too. That's about maintaining commitment, feeling a sense of control, and crucially, viewing challenges not as threats, but as opportunities for growth, a specific mindset.
Okay, planned setbacks, hardiness. What about the constant battle with distractions? How do we manage those effectively down to the nitty-gritty?
Oh, yeah. Distractions are huge. They can come from anywhere: emotions, random thoughts, little reminders, even sudden creative ideas that aren't relevant right now. A super practical, detailed tip Fiore gives is simply to write down distractions the moment they pop into your head. Just jot them down on a notepad.
Just write them down.
Just write them down. It gets them out of your head. It acknowledges them without letting them derail you completely. Then you can consciently set aside time later to deal with the important ones. It clears the way for focus now.
That seems doable. What other specific tools does he offer for making progress stick?
Well, the reverse calendar, which is linked to the Unschedule, helps break down those big, scary tasks into smaller, manageable pieces with personal deadlines. That really cuts down anxiety. There's also something called the work of worrying. This is about channeling anxiety into productive action.
The work of worrying. How does that work?
It means instead of just feeling anxious, you actively address the fear. Like, what's the worst-case scenario, really? Okay, now what's a practical step I can take to prevent it or deal with it? It turns worry into a problem-solving task. And finally, he mentions mental rehearsal and pre-programming, visualizing success, picturing yourself completing the steps. This actually helps build neural pathways for achieving the goal. And underpinning all of this is effective goal setting, making sure your goals are realistic, action-focused, specific, measurable, and tied to a clear commitment. Getting those details right makes a huge difference.
Wow, okay. We have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into the now habit.
Yeah.
And it really seems clear, doesn't it? Overcoming procrastination isn't about finding some magic bullet or one giant burst of willpower. It's about a whole series of very specific, sometimes small, detailed shifts. Shifts in thinking, in self-talk, in how we actually structure our time and approach our tasks.
Absolutely. It starts with understanding those subtle warning signs, recognizing the deeper reasons why we might be delaying, then consciously reframing our language from "I have to" "I choose to," embracing something potentially radical like the unschedule, cultivating flow, and using these very specific practical tools for resilience, for managing distractions. It really can transform your whole relationship with work, and maybe more importantly, with play and rest.
Yeah, it's all about those granular changes, those intentional adjustments in the details that add up over time to really significant results. So for you listening, here's something to maybe chew on this week, a provocative thought. What one small specific detail about how you approach tasks right now, maybe it's a nagging "I should," or maybe it's scheduling that guilt-free break you never take, what tiny thing could you reframe or deliberately implement this week to potentially unlock some unexpected progress and really start, living more in the now?